Star Wars 7x7, episode 3000. Yes, this is one of those rare, big, round number podcasts, and I gotta tell you, there's a part of me that kind of wants to blow by this because I'm just as excited for the Andor series as you are, and it's coming out tomorrow, and there's still so much to talk about, but I hope you won't mind if I take a moment and sit with this because this really is a significant achievement, and there's been a lot of other things going on over the last few months as well. Punch it! Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. So thank you for being with me for this 3000th episode. It's a significant investment of time for the podcast and of energy and of love, and yet it's almost kind of hysterical to think about it. With 3,000 episodes, if you were to listen to all of those episodes back to back to back, you would probably be able to listen to the entirety of the podcast output in about 3 weeks. But from my end of things, to produce 3,000 episodes of a podcast with all of the behind the scenes stuff, the research and the preparation and the recording and the editing and the publishing and the promoting, all that stuff, I'm approaching 10,000 hours invested into this show. And I tell you, I can honestly, completely, truly say from episode 0 to episode 3000 that I have loved every minute of this. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take a little time today to ground into this because 3,000 episodes, yeah, it is a big deal. And this is only the most recent milestone. This summer has been a summer of milestones for Star Wars 7x7. And of course, the 8th anniversary of the podcast in July, that was one of them. But we also passed 3 million downloads all time for the show, which is not something that I had made any public mention of, but I'm probably going to make a little more public mention of it because that also is rather a big deal. And just a couple of weeks ago, we reached 2,000 YouTube videos, and it took us about 4.5 years to get to that. Not just the episodes, but also the This Day in Star Wars History episodes that I've done over there as well. And you may have just heard me use we in terms of some of this stuff, you know, like we've hit 3 million downloads and we've reached our 8th anniversary and that sort of thing. This is something that I have heard a bit about, just in terms of why is it that I say we and us and our when I'm talking about the podcast, because this is a one-man show. I am doing everything for the show. So where is the we or us or our come from? And it's never really been a conscious choice. I didn't set out to get on the podcast and say we this or our that. So yeah, it wasn't like I was trying to, make the podcast sound bigger than it was or anything like that. The only people behind the scenes are a cat who's actually sitting right here on the desk as I record this, who's been labeled a senior producer just for my own amusement. But as I've been going through this summer and reflecting on 8 years and 3,000 episodes and 3 million downloads and 2,000 YouTube videos, it finally occurred to me where this has come from. So, this started back in 2014 as my own passion project, but it's really your passion that has sustained me throughout these 8+ years. You've shared with me your passion for all the different kinds of Star Wars storytelling. We've commiserated together when Star Wars projects got delayed and tried to understand them. We've rejoiced when we've had the opportunity to get together in person in real life at Star Wars celebrations. You've shared with me that you're having trouble keeping up with all of the amazing content that Lucasfilm is putting out, and I've shared with you that I'm having a similar kind of problem. But as we go through that together, we get to enjoy as much as we possibly can, maybe even a little bit more than we might otherwise have gotten to enjoy just on our own. So that whole we, us, our thing that I've been doing all these years, it's really about you and me, and about us getting to celebrate this amazing franchise and this amazing storytelling enterprise together. And this is crazy. I did some of the numbers. Here's what we've had to enjoy together since this podcast started in July of 2014. There have been 5 feature films released to date. There have been 4 seasons and 29 episodes of live action television, again released to date. That's going to go to 32 tomorrow and start a 5th season. Fantastic. There have been 8 seasons and 143 episodes of animated series between the final season of the Clone Wars and Rebels and Resistance and the Bad Batch. Dozens of novels and short stories, hundreds of comics, original manga and anime and adaptations of previous stories in manga, right? 20 different video games, either console or mobile or browser, 5 installments of storytelling in virtual reality. And mixed in with all that is possibly the most ambitious storytelling initiative that Lucasfilm has yet embarked upon with the whole High Republic situation. And they've only just gotten started. They've still got 2 phases to go, and we'll be going into live action, and who knows how deeply that will be pursued. So we've gotten all of that to enjoy together. And you know, you've told me that you've listened during your commutes and during your workouts, and that is all wonderful stuff. And you've also told me that you have listened to the show over breakfast and shared it with your family and even listened in the shower. And that's just, it's so amazing to me day after day. And I'm just so grateful to be a part of your life wherever you have invited me into your life. I do want to take a moment to especially thank Andy and Bobby and Dennis and Doug and Josh and Pam and Tim for all of your support over the years. It has meant the world to me. And Andrew and Beth and Christoph and Christina and Dale and Hector and Micah and Mikey, Ryan, Tony, and so many others who have reached out with kind words and comments and reviews over the years. Thank you so very much for your support. It means the world to me and is part of what keeps me going every single day. And most importantly of all, Brainstormer Lonnie, Quizmaster Joe, and Scorekeeper Declan, my wife and 2 kids, who have poured their love and support into my heart all of these years, and who have been my biggest cheerleaders this whole time and continue to be even after all this time. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. So I do want to share a couple of announcements while we're here. One of them has to do with the reviews thing. So maybe you remember a couple of months ago I was asking, more directly on the podcast for reviews for the podcast. Well, I'm going to start next month a 30 days of giveaways in honor of 3,000 episodes of the show. And we're going to go in cycles. So the first week is going to be drawing from people who have left reviews for the show on Apple Podcasts. I'll be drawing for giveaways from there. And then in future weeks, it'll be from TikTok and from Twitter and from YouTube. More details on that will be forthcoming. And then the other announcement is, I guess, more of an intention at this point, but as we've been creating this thing together, I have to say I have not done a lot of interviews with other podcasters. I have, from time to time, there's been that Star Wars Pop Podcasters on Podcasting category of the show, and then with Star Wars Celebration, I've interviewed podcasters here and there while I've been there, but I would really love to hear more podcaster voices, to make connections with more podcasters and find out more about what they love and what drives them. So I'm going to set an intention here to invite more podcasters on the show for interviews and share those conversations with you. There's so many awesome folks out there and so many more podcasts going than there were when I first started this. And I think it would be very cool for us to all get to know each other a little better. So that is the deal with that. And then also mentioned the interview thing on Twitter yesterday, I said that I would tell you a little bit about the why of the questions that I had proposed for a Mark Hamill interview, which, as you may have figured out, still hasn't happened yet. And I'm not giving up on that, but we're going to keep talking about it. And this is another way that we're going to keep talking about it. So the reason why I picked these interview questions, from, the short story, or from the long story short angle, I guess, it's that I wanted to create an interview situation where it would really be kind of a career retrospective type thing. So that wasn't just about Star Wars, although there is Star Wars stuff in here, but his career has gone on for like 50 plus years. It's absolutely amazing how prolific he's been. And so I wanted to ask him about different elements of his career, which has to do with why there's a question about him having performed on Broadway, and about his voice work, and about his current work on The Sandman and the upcoming Fall of the House of Usher. And there's also an early personal life thing about whether his parents knew he was going to be a performer before he did, and how they might have figured that out. And also something about his political commentary. He's definitely become more political over the years in terms of his, expressions of his philosophies and beliefs and support of political candidates on a certain side of the spectrum. And I would love to know more about what made him decide that he needed to use his platform in that way. And then there's a book called Tribe of Mentors by Tim Ferriss, who is a prolific podcaster and New York Times bestselling author. He has a set of questions that he asks for those, and I thought one of them was particularly fascinating, especially in light of The Last Jedi, the idea of failure that Yoda tries to communicate to him. And there is actually a question in Tribe of Mentors about failure. He asks, Tim Ferriss does, about favorite failures. Was there a failure that you initially thought was a failure but turned out to lead to a greater success? And then the Star Wars question is one that is also kind of a retrospective feel, basically. It asks how things have changed for him over the years. There's an idea that, as you kind of draw memories out into your conscious brain, you kind of alter them a little bit because you're a different person looking at those memories every time you pull them out. And so I posed a question about how he thinks that his own life experience may have changed his memories of his work on Star Wars over the years. So that's the idea for the interview, and I do hope that he has been seeing your tweets and my tweets, and that we're going to be able to convince him one of these days to do that. Keeping my fingers crossed, and we'll see about other avenues that we can pursue for this as well. But again, thank you so much for your support of my dream to bring this conversation to you. I think you would be just as fascinated by his answers to these questions as I would be, and I tried to think of questions that might be interesting for you to hear the answers to as well. And I think right there, that's a good place to call it an episode. So once again, thank you so much for being a part of my life as you have let me be a part of yours. I am supremely grateful for it and continue to be every single day. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the podcast, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.